Our listeners have heard me talk about Inesa's hemp for several weeks now, and it's my pleasure to welcome Inesa, the founder of Nesa's Hemp, to the truth. Inesa Ponomariovaite. How did I do?
You did great.
Oh, good. We're off to a good start. She has such an interesting story to tell. I really wanted to invite her onto the truth and to share her story with our audience. She grew up in Lithuania and decided that she wanted to come to America for a better life. So she walked across the southern border of Mexico and made her way to New York. Wrong. No, she did it the correct way. Anessa, welcome to the truth.
Thank you so much for having me here today. And in fact, this interview is currently getting recorded or online at this very moment from actually Lithuania.
That is, it's like you're next door, actually. So thank you for calling us while you're on holiday. I understand that you're there for a family reunion, and I want to hear more about that. But let's start with the beginning. How old were you when you came to the United States, and what prompted you to want to relocate here?
So America, even right now, when I like scroll on the streets here in Lithuania and small little towns, when you tell people you're from United States, everybody's like, oh, it's a dreamland, oh, it's the best country. Like people have their like this big dream, the big bubble opinion, how things are so great here, which is it's very much truth. But I was just like everybody else. Like there's this dreamland. You don't know exactly what that looks like, what it feels like. So when I lived in Lithuania almost 20 years ago, I actually wanted to visit United States, and I chose this as one of my destinations as like a vacation trip. And when I got to America, I actually met, it was a love story. I met someone, and that person ended up convincing me through the love story that I should stay in United States and should create a family because he was very much in love with me. So, and because of that relationship and because of that love story, I ended up staying in United States. The love story did not end up being a love story actually from the moment I lost my status, because when you come to America after 3 months, visitor status, you automatically, if you don't leave the country, you automatically lose your status and you become illegal. So that's what happened to me. And I had to basically get married, or I believe the other option was invest millions of dollars in order to get your green card and American citizen, but just was not an option in my finance situation. So I ended up being, and I actually, the way I got my status, it was a lots of blood and tears, a lots of hard work, a lots of proving myself that I'm worthy to stay in our country. And when I say our country, I'm representing United States.
Connect those dots for us. What did you do to achieve citizenship, right? Or was it just a green card at the time?
I mean, first of all, you always start with the green card, but in order to do that, you have to really prove that you don't have any bad intentions, that you're gonna pay your taxes, that you came here and you didn't plan to, stay legal. Like, I mean, it's almost like a thought process, right? How are you going to prove United States government, the immigration services, that's not the case, that you're really here for the good intentions? So you have to really work yourself. You have to get your job. You have to, prove that you're worthy to be in this country. And more than regular Americans that go to and live 9 to 5, and it's a lot of work. It's not just like, you come in and somebody hands you this green card, unless you, I don't know, like I know there's the stories where people cross American in America through Mexican border, and I'm like, that's not the right thing to do. Like it's wrong, because I had to really go through 7 to 8 year process, to prove that I was in domestic violence, that I'm worthy to stay in this country, that I'm going to pay my taxes, that I love America. And I had to do my oath ceremony. I had to learn everything about the country, plus pay the taxes. So first they gave me social security and to see if I'm going to pay the taxes. Nobody gave me a green
Hmm.
card immediately. So, first day when I remember when my attorney called me, he said, you got a social security tax ID, you can pay taxes now. just for me to get that number was the best day in my life. I literally
You celebrated it.
I hugged every person on the street. I did.
So you could pay your taxes.
I was so
What a
happy.
great story. We should all look at paying taxes in that prism. So now, where did you go when you came to the United States initially?
I always stayed in Chicago. So Chicago was the
So why Chicago?
I did not know any better or worse. It was just one of those larger cities you choose to and there was actually one of the reasons I'm sorry that was one of the reasons because there's a lot of Lithuanians in Chicago, and the largest Lithuanian community is, besides Lithuania itself, which is where I'm right now, it's in Chicago. So it's
I'll be darned.
I was excited to meet like Lithuanians in America, and and I was just, that was my starting destination.
And so that's where you met the scoundrel that victimized you?
Then that's where I met yes. I can't.
Did you marry him?
Yes, we got married, and funny enough, he did not want to wear me a white dress on my wedding day, so I had to wear the black one.
What?
Yes.
Well, there was a clue, Inesa.
I know, but I was.
That's kind of sketchy, I think.
You tell me this now. I'm experienced.
Black wedding dress? You're kidding. Yeah. What was the matter with him?
It really doesn't matter at the moment, because it was his own life, his own stories. I forgave him. I truly wish him nothing but the best from the bottom of my heart. This person came in my life end of the day for a reason, because I see it wasn't for that story, I would never be in America and making such a beautiful stories. I help so many people around the world, in the United States, of course. I have a big mission. I found myself in the country. America is the country I love the most. I'm right now in Lithuania, and I'm dreaming to come back home. And it's just, America was worth it to go through everything what I had to go through.
Well, I'm sorry that you had that experience. Do you want to get into the unseemliness of the whole thing? Because I understand it was more than just abuse.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't really hide. In fact, one day I'm planning to really write a book or even a documentary, because I've been offered multiple times now. I just don't think it's the right timing, but I can share a little bit, bits and pieces. When I started my separation process through very harsh moments in my life, I was actually exposed to the big world of America. So the good guys and the bad guys, right? So when I came from this small little country that not much really changed since last 20 years ago, to be honest with you, I was raised like never lie, never steal, never cheat. If you do those things, I'm going to cut your fingers, I'm going to cut your tongue, So I was raised in very strict values, make sure, and I just thought everybody around me was the same. So with that being said, when I left that relationship, I can't really call it marriage at this point, but it was marriage. But
for how long? How long were you?
We spent 4 years together, but after 1 year being together, there was another woman who knocked at the door and told me she was married with the man I was living with.
Oh my gosh. Oh Lord. And had you experienced problems in the marriage up until that time, or was that just a complete shock out of the left field?
We were not married at that time, but I was very shocked because I had no idea and nobody told me, and he gave me all kinds of excuses why. But long story short is like, I wasn't aware he was in a different legal marriage at that time.
I'm so sorry. That had to have been a bad day.
It was a lot of bad days in the first 5-7 years in United.
But you were married to him at that time. Is that right?
I was not, but we were living together and preparing to get married. So.
And you still married the bum?
I mean, Jesus forgive 77 times. So, I mean, I was, to be honest with you, John, I'm not going to lie. I was extremely naive. If that would happen to me today, I would not even talk to the person ever in my life. But because I was so naive, I was this little tiny butterfly that never seen a lie, that's never been exposed to the big world, is just very different when people manipulating you. I thought I'm living with an honest person. So I truly believed in everything the person said until eventually I did not. And the same thing would happen to me afterwards when I really start living on my own, separated. There was a lot of all kinds of stuff involved, order protections, and you name it. Like, I start looking for jobs. I start, looking how I'm gonna live in this country, what I'm gonna do. Can I have some kind of type of friendships? Because I was not allowed to have friends during that relationship. So I had to create friendships. I had to figure out what I'm going to do. And of course, I had to support myself. At the same time, I had to pay all these attorney bills, that I was going through the process, and immigration and all kinds of other cases. So I personally faced a lot of actually dark people. And these dark people were not lazy to take advantage of me. And I was naive. So they took advantage of my naiveness.
Well, and you were young and you were in a foreign country and you had led, I presume, a sheltered life up until that point. So I fully understand and feel bad for you that you had to go through that. But then you got caught up with some other bad people, or they tracked you down. I don't know.
Yes, human trafficking, it's very much real, and I know for firsthand. I was targeted by human traffickers myself, and that happened multiple times. So one time almost successfully, and second time I was actually, no, the third time where I started reporting everything to the police, but police wasn't really helping me. And I've been to different, suburbs. I thought maybe these people gonna report, and I realized it's not gonna work because nobody cares, because I'm still physically here. And that's where I actually realized America has another problem where, let's say, if I reported pure evidence that somebody is about to kidnap on a camera in the grocery store, and at the same time I have the person's license plate, I have the person's video, I have their face, I have him literally tracing me down an entire grocery store all the way to my car, and I had the evidence, and that was not enough for our law enforcement, because they said you're still here, like there's no crime that happened. And because there's no crime that happened, they could not arrest or do something about it. And in order to do something about it, they probably had to hire like private investigators or something like that. And of course, I didn't have money like this. So long story short is like, not always the law enforcement were helpful. In one situation, yes, they were helpful because a lot happened there, but at the same time, in the other situations, they're not. So I almost start feeling it like, what if these people part of these people agendas, or somehow they're related?
So you said that it happened 3 times or 4 times?
Over 4 or 5 years, yes. Mhm.
So were those independent overtures or were they related?
I don't think I think two groups, 2 times were related into one, and the second time, or the second group, was just completely different. I don't think.
So what does it look like? I mean, how did you know that you were being drawn into a web of human traffickers?
I mean, I was traced almost into my car. And of course, the Holy Spirit was with me. So that's why I'm not just a believer in God. I'm fearing God, not to my job is to know God's word, because I owe him so much for my life. He saved me in all those situations. So
But what happened? How did they approach you? How did they try and
the one was
lure
in the
you
grocery
in?
store. The person was literally, while I was even on my phone, I was looking in the lower aisle and reading some ingredients, as always, as a health professional, especially right now. I was reading like ingredients. I was literally on my knees and I checked my phone. So later on, when I checked the cameras, this person was literally behind my back, also reading my phone at the same time, and I had no idea. This person was
Wow.
chasing me the entire time in the grocery store for about 20-25 minutes. And then, of course, he tried to get me into this car, and I had to run away as fast as I can. And I had to go back to grocery store. I told the managers what happened, and eventually the owners released and showed me the video. I mean, it took me like a week or so to get to the video. And when I got the video, I was trying to share that to law enforcement, and they did not care to do anything about it. The second time they came to my
Did
home,
they watch the video? Did they even watch
they
the
did not
video?
want to watch the video because they said there's no reason to, because nothing happened. You are
Yeah, but you've got somebody effectively stalking you, trying to kidnap you,
they said there's
but
no
nothing
proof.
happened.
Even the video. They said, oh, what if the person is crazy? They said there's no proof. And that's where I realized that one day I want to be so strong and powerful where it can help to change even laws like that in our system, because this is not okay. Like, I was one of those people. I made so many reports and nothing happened after these police reports.
Wow. So when did you start Nesa's Hemp?
When I finally settled in the United States and I start like living what I call American dream. And when I say American dream, like I finally got my green card, I got my, was working on my citizenship. I was very, very happy, and I had a great job, and I was looking to build another job career-wise. And I had a great apartment. I was already looking to bring my sister in the United States. So I actually, pay her school so I could get her into college. So I felt like, whoa, my life is like finally perfect. Like everything settled in. It took me so many years to get to this point. I learned the basics, how to function in our country. And and then I looked at my life and I said, this is not it. Like, I don't like it. Like, I just don't feel my heart is fulfilled. Like, that's what God wants me to do? Just live like this for the rest of my life and just be better? So I prayed for the whole year to ask God what's my purpose in life. And actually, about, I mean, 11, 12 months later, I got a call from my mother. She was here in Lithuania, where I am right now. And she said that I have cancer, I have, max, 6 months to live. Can you come back home and visit me? I want to spend some time. And I said, Mom, I said, God just answered my prayers. I said, you're not going to die. You're going to be cancer free. I don't know how, but I'm going to help you. And God just answered my prayers, because this is it. Like, you're going to be healed. And because of you, there's going to be lots of people healed. And I saw this beautiful vision, and this vision has been definitely the most life-changing vision I ever received. That's what I said, God is the most beautiful thing ever happened to me. And since then, I went on a deep dive journey on cancer research. And of course, I discovered endocannabinoid system. And when I discovered endocannabinoid system, I realized it's the most beautiful God's given system in the human body that nobody talks about. Laws are passing by, and our actual communities don't even understand what that is. I understood what happens when you empower endocannabinoid system. I understood how it's critical for people to take a good quality products like cannabinoids, and they're essential to us. And I just was looking to purchase a good product, and I just couldn't find a good product on the market.
So what year was this?
That was 2018 or 18 or no, 19 probably. Yeah.
Okay, so 7, 8 years ago, and you stumbled on this while you were looking for ways to help your mom, who had cancer. And so, what was it about endocannabinoids that help cure cancer, arrest cancer? What does it do to cancer?
Endocannabinoids do help empower so many systems in the human body that helps to fight cancer. So first of all, I just want to be loud and clear that we're not making any claims, because we're not curing or treating any disease. But I just want to say, endocannabinoid system, I really want every single one of you who is listening right now, just go and Google what endocannabinoid system, just put ECS system. ECS system is responsible and what it's doing for the human body. If you empower that system, basically helps you to empower everything else in the body. It's like a master switch. And can it help with cancer? I personally seen where people said my cancer shrank because of this product, but can I say that really happened? No, because if I personally did not see the patient or client or customer, I just got a call from customer service, and they told the customer service that they need more bottles because it's been shrinking their cancer, oral cancer that was in their mouth. So, and with that being said, the stories is not just cancer. Endocannabinoid system is responsible for way more. It's the pain management, inflammation, brain disorders, gut issues. We have one of our producers right now using our product, and he told me that because he's tracking his health with one of those aura rings. And he said, Inesa, do you understand my body right now on the aura is telling me that the restoration process, it's much longer and much better and much deeper than before. He has deeper sleep right now after 2-3 days of using the product. Normally, you don't feel those things in a human body like easily, like unless there's a data tracking little device. So, John, I can't say there's unlimited potential what the product or cannabinoids can do. But the problem is everybody's thinking the cannabis is the only does high THC. And that's where I'm having a problem right now with our legislators and our government, because they're passing these laws that are so brutal to the future of endocannabinoid system and education and the public health, because all these laws are currently getting passed is not in a favor for people like your listeners to know endocannabinoid system.
All right. So we're saying endocannabinoid. So is cannab a derivative of cannabis? Is that where the word comes from?
Yeah, so it's a one plant, and on this entire planet Earth for thousands of years, we always had one plant. It's the hemp plant, that low THC where you don't get high, nobody gets high. But what they did, they took this one plant and engineered another version of the plant, which is in the laboratories, genetically engineered, which is cannabis. And cannabis is where everybody's talking about people getting high.
Right.
The actually alcohol industry, liquor industry right now is lobbying the most for this specific THC, this engineered plant, the THC part. So they're trying to regulate right now. In fact, Target just got their licenses for the cannabis. So you see, the hemp plant was always here for thousands of years. Does not make you high, doesn't do anything but incredible health benefits from the head to toes. There's no limit for how much it can do. But they took this plant, and instead talking about this plant, no, they engineered another version of the plant right here, and this version of this plant is the one that's getting regulated, which is completely fake version, high THC, liquor industry is taking over. This is the one that's getting regulated currently right now on the federal government level. There's not much health benefits. In fact, there's a lot of side effects to the point where, in my opinion, it's dangerous if you consume it too often. So this plant, where Nesa's hemp is currently, that is so essential for humans to take, it's so essential for humans to take, is not being regulated, it's not being talked. And in fact, the way the new laws are passing right now, this November 12th, is gonna look very sad for us, because they basically saying that certain cannabinoids no longer, which is THC, it can be only 0.4 per unit. So which is very low amount per unit. That means you can't grow these plants like the original version plants. The basically government is saying you can have a baby, but you cannot get pregnant. This is how bad it is. So the law looks pretty good on piece of paper, because they're still saying, yes, you can have these plants, you can have these products, no problem. But you cannot grow these plants. I talk to my farmers. Every single farmer right now is liquidating closing their businesses. Oregon, California is having issues. Chicago, Illinois, Michigan is the same. Everybody's moving in the high THC category.
Moving into the high THC category or out of it?
Into,
really? So, but that doesn't carry the medicinal effects that hemp does, correct?
No,
or
that's the one.
Maybe it does, but that's not the primary purpose somebody's going to take it.
No, that's not the one. In fact, there's too much research saying these high-level THC products are not okay for us to consume. And this plant came on this earth to educate and finally bring the truth. And right now, I was so excited that President Trump posted on his Truth Social about endocannabinoid system, because that was the first acknowledgement ever that he said there is such a thing and is the most important thing in a human body. The doctors don't even know how to pronounce it. But your whole health and longevity and everything depends on that thing, which is endocannabinoid system. But you see, we're not doing anything to regulate this plant, which is hemp plant, to empower this endocannabinoid system. But President Trump posted on his Truth Social, no, everybody's pushing this high THC that's going to make our kids high, brain dead. They're going to be in the car accidents. And liquor industry is lobbying the most money, including Target just purchases license for that.
All right. So when you talk about endocannabinoids, is that one and the same as hemp? Or do you use those interchangeably?
No, cannabinoids, the ones we have, they are not the same as in the high THC plants, such as cannabis. No, they're not, because.
Oh, well, I'm not talking about with THC. I'm talking about without THC. Or are you saying that cannabinoids inherently have THC? I'm a little confused.
THC alone is another high. It's the cannabinoid, but it's the hybrid. The one is on the market. So been sold and promoted the most. But it is part of. So cannabinoids could be CBD, CBDA, CBGA, CBNA, THC. All those are in a cannabinoid group. But
what you sell is hemp. Is that a cannabinoid?
That is all cannabinoids. They don't make
without the THC.
Without the THC, yeah. Yes, correct.
Right. And what do most people use it for?
John, I just fell in love with my product one more time after 100 times. I told you I came in a family reunion here. And This woman, one could not make it to family because she simply can't walk. She has major nerve damage. And she said she works like a duck. That was cute when she said that. And she's my uncle's wife who passed away a long time ago. Older lady, 75, 80 years old. She could not make it to the family. So what I did after the whole event, I decided to go to her and visit her, bring her food and do whatever it takes to kind of nurture her. So I truly see she can't walk. Like, it took her 4 minutes to open the door. I thought she's not even home. So I felt really bad for her. I said, "Are you been doing something?" She's like, "Yeah, I've been going visiting doctors. I've been for 8 weeks nonstop. I've been for 4 years in pain." I said, "What is your pain level?" She's like, 8. "For how long have you been 8?" She's like, "I've been 4 years in level pain 8 and I can't do anything."
What a shame.
And I said, "Really?" I said, "I have a feeling you're low on endocannabinoids." And I said, "Why don't we just really," she had the puffy legs, swollen ankles, the whole legs are full of tingling. And I said, "You know what?" I said, "I have this whole bottle. I'm just going to really load you up right now." I said, "Please lift your shirt." And she did. I started applying everything on her lower back. I started rubbing 2-3 dropperfuls on her each leg. And I gave her 2 drops only orally for her because I did not know how her body is going to react. So I wanted to kind of start slow orally. Within 5 minutes, I can see she's like loosed up. And I said, "What is your pain level?" She's like, "Actually 5. I said, "Really?" She's like,
"After what period of time of using the 5 minutes?
Yes, 5 minutes.
Wow.
She said she is in 5. And I said, "Oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
I can't believe it." And then I waited another another 5-10 minutes. And she's like, I think it's 4 or 3 right now. I texted her daughter today. That was Sunday. That was 3-4 days ago. I texted her daughter today. I said, can you please tell me how's her pain? She said, Inesa, her lower back pain is still not back. The leg pain came back yesterday, and her pain in the leg's been 3. John, I just gave her 1 dose. She is
That's phenomenal.
severely low and deficient on endocannabinoids, because they're also responsible to manage pain. So when you see what is going to be good for, I really, really don't know, because this does so much for your body. As I said, if you go and Google endocannabinoids, you will see it yourself. And I'm going to show you. She was so happy and smiling when I left. She was happy,
Oh, wow.
smiling. Yeah.
She doesn't look like she's got pain at a level
No,
8.
she was all happy. She's like, my pain is gone. It's like, I can finally walk not like a duckling anymore.
Well, what a great testament to your product. So where do people find it if they want to buy it? Where should they go?
It's very easy. nesashemp.com, and Nesas, Nesas, nesashemp.com.
All right. Very good. Well, I use it, and I'm not sure that I've gotten the results that your aunt did, but I haven't had any negative side effects, and I'm still optimistic that it will help control inflammation and swelling in my body, something that anybody at my age that's a male in America has to worry about, not worry about, but be conscious of at least. So I'm hoping that maybe in my case it's preventative, but I'm sticking with it until I change my mind or run out, in which case I'll probably order some more. But thank you, Nesa. I really appreciate you coming on The Truth today.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, I've got a whole lot more to talk to you about. Can you come back another time?
Yes, absolutely. Would be happy to.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, you be safe in Lithuania. Safe travels back to Chicago. And we look forward to speaking to you again upon your return.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
We'll get right back to the show after this brief word from our sponsor, Masculine Man Essentials. Look, most deodorants on the shelf are full of aluminum, parabens, and synthetic junk. Masculine Man Essentials goes at it differently. All natural ingredients, built for men, and it actually holds up through the whole day long. Whether you're at the office, at the gym, in traffic, or just getting home for the night, try Masculine Man Essentials. I've been using it, and I can tell you, it's the real deal. Head to masculinemanessentials.com, grab yourself a 2-pack or a 4-pack, use the promo code TRUTH at the checkout to save on your first order, and the link is in today's show notes. As you know, we don't put our name on anything that we haven't tried and believe in. So when I tell you about Nesa's Hemp, I want you to listen up. Nesa's Hemp is a Chicago-based company that makes hemp, and it was founded by Inesa. And what she's built is really something. We're talking about clean, high-quality hemp products with no gimmicks, just real ingredients, real transparency, with real results. Whether you're dealing with stress, sleep issues, inflammation, or you just want to add something natural to your wellness routine, Nesa's Hemp has something to offer you. Head over to nesahemp.com, that's Nesas hemp.com, and check out what they've got. Use our promo code TRUTH for a discount just by being our listener. Trade seems ever present in the national news. President Trump earlier this week announced that he is not renewing USMCA with Mexico and Canada. Alejandro Martinez is with the National Food and Commerce Union in Mexico, and he joins us now to break it down for us. All right, so what does it mean for Mexico that Trump is saying that he's not going to renew the USMCA agreement?
Well, I think especially we should find out why. That's going to be the most important part. I think the review is going to go for a while. They had to make the call today because officially July 1st was a deadline imposed in the last USMCA 6 years ago. So they had to make a call today, and the call is not to renew it for the next 16 or 10 years just automatically, which is not very pleasant for corporations, especially because, of course, it brings uncertainty to the market, because you'll never know if there's a review every year, what is going to change. And there's a lot of subjects that are on the table, with rules of origin, with tariffs, of course, with labor standards, with China, of course, pushing their cheap products through Mexico into the U.S., forced labor, imports from forced labor countries. And I think that's all too unsolved right now. So I understand why the U.S. is not willing to commit to anything today. I think they're going to have a next review meeting on the 20th of July in Washington, D.C., and we will see probably more in detail why President Trump is right now not wanting to renew the agreement just with his signature. Of course, the national security issue is also very important. Everything that has to do with the cartels, a lot of that subjects are also on the table. And, John, it's all intertwined for us in the union labor sector. We say that there's no safer border than a border where a Mexican doesn't want to leave its country because he cannot survive here with dignity. So we should work together on raising labor standards, on guaranteeing that Mexicans have freedom of association, formalized labor, and strong wages all over North America, so the Mexicans stay at home.
Well, what does the United States mostly import from Mexico? I think automobiles is one of
Yes.
the leading imported items, right?
20 million jobs, around 20 million jobs depend on the USMCA. Half of them are in the automotive sector. So
Yes.
it's massive. The supply chain between Mexico, US, and Canada is going back and forth with auto parts as small as a screw and as big as a car, ready to sell. And they are negotiating, of course, the rules of origin of all those products. I think President Trump wants to go up to 75 or even 85% made in America. So the tariffs are not so high compared to other countries. And I think what we haven't been seeing in the last months in the conversation is what's going to happen when the automotive industry is automatized, which is coming. They're firing thousands of workers in the manufacturing business in Mexico and in the US, even more with the arrival of robots and automation and AI. And I don't think that the USMCA is addressing that future. So for one part, I understand President Trump wanted to bring American jobs back, but I think the root of the problem is the poverty wages we have in Mexico. Also, American companies have been paying for years or for decades those poverty wages, and that's the source of the security issues, of the tariffs issues, of unfair trade, migration, and everything else that you have having had in the last years.
Well, Mexico is the United States' largest trading partner.
Yes.
The U.S. exported over the last year $354 billion in goods. Meanwhile, Mexico imported 550. I'm sorry, I got it backwards. U.S. exported 354 billion to Mexico, while it imported 550 billion from Mexico,
Yep.
leaving a pretty good $150 billion trade deficit.
Yes, that's right.
How do we get to parity?
The first NAFTA agreement in the 90s, I think it was very drafted very poorly because it turned Mexico into the manufacturing backyard of the U.S. Mexico produces 80% of what Mexico produces is sold to the U.S. So the U.S. took advantage of the proximity of the low wages, artificially
Right.
lowered wages, and American people got also used to cheap goods. And that's something it's very hard to beat. You cannot beat China by becoming China. Also, the people have to get rid of this idea that you need $5 Barbie dolls because you will get cheap labor, forced labor, child labor through those Barbie dolls into your homes.
Well,
So,
historically, we've continued to make the same mistake over and over again since the beginning of slavery in this country in the 16 and 1700s. It is morally wrong. I think everybody accepts that today. But yet we're perfectly willing to exploit labor when it's not within our borders. So it's okay to go to Mexico for cheap labor. It's okay to go to China for cheap labor, but it does have repercussions when we do that. We're still paying, they don't call it, but I will, reparations in the U.S. to descendants of slaves, which is pretty irrational to me. I mean,
Crazy.
Slavery ended in 1865. Segregation ended effectively in the 50s, but in serious ways in the 1964 with the Civil Rights Act.
Right.
And I think there was a moral imperative on the United States government to help raise Black people up in this country. They had been denied, discriminated against, and education withheld. They were treated very shabbily. Now, roll the tape, 64 years forward, I think that we have done our part, but now we're doing the same thing all over again by allowing Central Americans, South Americans to come across our southern borders where they are employed at substandard wages. Most of them, the vast majority, don't pay taxes. And the employer is likewise violating federal law by keeping people on their books that are not paying withholding taxes on these people, and they're not lawfully allowed to be employed in the United States. The flip side of that is, what are we going to do if we stop at day one? I think the agricultural industry in this country will come to a grinding halt. I think hospitality, hotels, and restaurants will suffer badly. To me, it almost seems like a win-win, but a win-win-lose. So by that, I mean the employer wins. The employee actually does win because they want to come here. They come here for a better way of life and a higher wage. The lose is to the U.S. government, who doesn't get to get their greedy hands on the tax money that would be otherwise paid. And that delta actually is why it's a good deal for the employee, because they're not paying taxes on the money. So everybody wins but the government, and that is roundly condemned unless you're one of those industries that is employing them. So what's your thought on U.S. immigration policies today and the deportation efforts that are, I'm sure you're aware of, that are taking place?
Of course. I think you're right on the spot. The American workers and the Mexican workers, we have the same enemy, and it's not each other. It's cheap labor, exploitation, and a system built to keep us both poor and divided, because I don't think it was a win-win-lose. I think it was a lose-lose situation. If you see what happened during the Biden and Obama's administration, American workers lost millions of jobs, good wages. The real wages went down almost $2,000 during Obama's 8-year tenure. Then they went up 4,000 something while President Trump's first tenure was going on. Then went down almost 5,000 with Biden, and they're coming up again. So if I would make a summary of the strategy of exploitation through migration or forced migration, like they did in Biden's administration, I think everyone lost, because, of course, you're right. The migrants want to find a better way of living, but they're still slaves in a lot of American fields. There are conditions of work that no American would bear. No legal way of working in the Californian fields, in the fields in Ohio, in Illinois, in Arkansas, in Ontario, Canada also. But of course, you come from being extremely poor, extremely unsafe, extremely enslaved in your own country. If you get it a little bit better, you will be thankful, but that's also not dignifying. And I think we agree that dignity comes from God, not from the state, and that both Mexico and America have done a very poor job protecting their own people. I think President Trump is right in identifying that cheap labor is a common enemy and that migration is a shared problem. Because don't forget about it, John. You got, during Biden's tenure, maybe 10 million, 15 million migrants. We'll never know, right? But half of them also stood in Mexico. We have also an illegal migration problem from South and Central America. Many of them are also enslaved on agricultural industry because no Mexican wants to work on the fields also. Many of them went to work for the cartels because they came from Colombia, they came from Venezuela. That was their job, killing people and selling drugs. So we saw in the Biden's tenure, the cartels become the most powerful and the richest men ever existed in the history of the world through human trafficking, children trafficking, fentanyl, drugs in general, gasoline trafficking, corruption in the political system. That was all caused by the open borders policy from the last president and almost destroyed our country and almost destroyed yours too, because the cartels are killing 100,000 Americans a year. So I think it was very, very bad for both countries what happened last presidency.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. So what you've shared with us is something that I've never heard talked about before, and that is that these migrations impacted Mexico negatively. I did not know that a lot of people on their way to the United States just decided to stop off in Mexico and spend some time there.
Well, they say that for each 10 migrants trying to cross the border, 4 stood in Mexico because they weren't able to, or it was too expensive or too risky or whatever. So imagine if you got 10 million, maybe we have 4 million of them here from Haiti and from Venezuela, Colombia, Salvador, Ecuador, and all these countries that were actually pushing a lot of criminals out of their borders. That's also true. It's not a racist thing to say. And we live it every day in Mexico. Colombians joining the cartels, killing Mexicans for a job. It's not an untrue. So I think we're sharing the same problems. You have just more power and more money to solve them. We don't.
Well, I don't know that we have more power to solve it because President Trump has tried to deport illegals, and the optics have not been good around it. And he's really paid politically for trying to do that, which is really kind of ironic given the fact that he was probably the issue, the number one issue which he was elected was immigration and deportation. So I have said repeatedly on this show and others that I felt that there needed to be a more sensible means to deport people. And I think the Americans in general, I think it's an 80-20 issue that Americans want illegals deported from our country. The problem is very few of those people want people deported in an inhumane manner. Mm-hmm. And so our media has focused on the tragedies that have related to deportation, and that becomes the narrative. And so Americans lose their appetite for deporting people. So I've advocated for not a one size fits all, a more sensible approach to deporting illegals. I've suggested that we reopen the COVID vaccine centers that we put up in a matter of weeks, and that we rebrand them as guest registration centers. Every illegal must go register. If you do, we're going to work with you. We'll vet you in your country of origin. We'll vet you here. If you can get sponsored by an employer, we will create a class for you and give you a Trump Gold card that will allow you to stay here for 3 to 5 years. The policymakers can figure out how long, and then there can be a review at the end of that 3 to 5 years on on that person's future status in the country. That to me would be truly a win-win-win, because part of the requirement for staying would be that you have to get a Social Security card. Your employer has to pay withholding. You have to pay taxes. You cannot participate in the United States elections, and you would sign an agreement not to, nor could you participate in our social services. So to me, if we were able to do that, and we could line up virtually every adult American to give them a jab in the arm. Why couldn't we line up all the immigrants to go through a vetting process? The consequence if they didn't, and they get picked up for jaywalking and they don't have a Trump gold card, they would go straight to alligator Alcatraz. There would be no call for humanitarianism. They just go straight back to the country of origin. And if they're a raper, robber, murderer, they go straight to CCOT. What do you think?
Well, it sounds very, very sane what you're saying about the process that it could happen. I think the corporations don't want that to happen. They're lobbying strongly, agricultural industry, automotive industry. They need this slave labor, hospitality, restaurants, etc. And they're lobbying on both sides of the border, unfortunately. So this betting doesn't happen. On one side, corporations want to increase their profits, of course, and they need this cheap labor to have these huge profits they're having right now in both countries. On the other side, the Democrats want voters that keep them in power forever.
Exactly.
And I think but while importing millions of illegal migrants, they are betting on midterms maybe so they can make new policies so they can get them to vote with a gym card or whatever, your ID from your dog, like in California, and rig the elections forever. That's a very third worldly thing to do. And I'm watching this from this side of the screen happening. The legacy media never reported like this when Obama and Bill Clinton were deporting millions in cages, children. The cages were built by Obama, not by Trump. We shouldn't forget about that. But, I understand that it's a civilizational issue right now, and I'm watching the legacy media in America going full communist and pro-China and pro-Palestine. And it's very worrying for us because if America gets a cold, we get pneumonia. The way around. So that's why I'm advocating for stronger wages, formalizing labor, regulating AI. And because if we get the Mexican worker is fine or good, the American worker gets better. That's the uncomfortable truth. If the Mexican worker is in poverty, in anger, and in desperation, a lot of Americans die. That's already proven, thousands and hundreds of thousands. So I think the USMC is a great weapon, a great leverage for us labor advocates that the next review has to have better labor standards, be really enforceable in every country or in North America, also in American fields, American companies, and that we have strong wages all over the region. So forced migration stop, cartel activity lowers down, and I think our shared problems would go much, much, much less under what we have right now.
Well, I tell you, I interview a lot of people on this program, and you seem to have as much or even greater insight into the political picture in America than many of our guests who are supposed to be the so-called experts. And I really appreciate the fact that you have such a good insight. I would say that there's one thing that you left out, and a possible area of confusion on my part, or maybe disagreement between you and I, is while cheap labor is clearly one of the factors, I don't think it's bargain basement cheap. I think that if you looked in the construction industry in particular, you would find that the wages are comparable to U.S. workers, but there is no withholding tax and there's no employee tax. Now, that may not be dollar for dollar true, but I don't think the disparity is all that great, but maybe I'm just simply misinformed.
It depends on the position, but like the lower where the masses, right, in the construction workers earn 5 to 7 times more in the U.S. than in Mexico.
The fact is, I lack knowledge about that. You may well be right. I do think that the other side of that coin is that there are very few businesses that I go in, especially in the food or hospitality industry, that there's not a sign in the window that says now hiring. And there is, I think, a labor shortage in the United States. And I think illegals are filling a very needed void that exists there. So that is a
No,
dimension that I
I'm going
think
to tell you what
warrants.
happens in Mexico. We think the same, right? On the Mexican fields, we're like, nobody wants to work on the fields. There's a labor shortage. We need the Central Americans. We need the South Americans. The thing is that you start a cycle where you're hiring slave labor or half cheap labor on your field. So, of course, no Mexican wants to work there. The company gets used to those margins of profit that they're not going to achieve if they hire Mexicans, the same as American companies. They wouldn't be able to, they think they cannot hire Americans for those jobs. But remember, 60 years ago, 80 years ago, being a farmer in America was a great job.
Yeah,
Well paid,
all my ancestors,
right?
almost without exception,
Farming,
were
hospitality.
farmers.
It was normal. Americans built houses. Americans were carpenters. Americans were electricians. Why landscapers? Why do we think right now that if there are no Mexicans or illegal Central Americans in America doing that, Americans wouldn't do that? See how many millions of Americans are in food stamps right now. Bring them back to work. It's as easy as that, all these jobless people, young people not wanting to work on food stamps, healthy people should just go back to the fields.
Well, when all of these jobs leave Mexico and come to the U.S., does it create a labor shortage in Mexico?
From qualified labor, yes. We have too much unqualified labor, and many of the qualified labor are going, electricians, landscapers, builders, truckers, are going to the US. And I think Americans deserve also these jobs because many of them, like truckers, are very well paid. They are not really bad paid jobs. They're just getting used to be done by migrants or illegal migrants right now. We have to take that aside of the equation and let Americans want to work again on their own fields, their own trucks, their own landscaping, their own building, right? I think that's the irony of the whole thing. People have to be able to go back to work without thinking that that's jobs for illegals.
Well, I'm for reforming our own welfare system. I think that we provide incentives for people not to work.
Yeah.
And I have some firsthand anecdotal information around that. And I think we do a terrible disservice to many people in this country by allowing them to live off the welfare system.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
I had a conversation with Newt Gingrich 40 years ago, and he said that the welfare system was a horrible institution that we've created, and that it does not result in the goodwill that we hope that it will.
Mhm.
People go to the welfare department to collect their subsistence, and the person behind the desk, they're the 200th person that has visited that day. The person behind the desk has been badgered and disrespected all day long, or a lot. They're tired, they're cranky. And so what do? They disrespect the person who's coming for the welfare check. And so you just set up this constant cycle of resentment all the way around. And instead of the person leaving that office and feeling grateful that their fellow man has reached out and offered them a hand, they feel incredibly resentful because of the mistreatment that they've received. And then they also have a disincentive not to go find work. And, I've raised 3 young men who I'm very proud of.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I learned the hard way that when you give somebody something and they haven't earned it, there is a tendency that it creates resentment rather than gratitude and entitlement. So I've been keenly aware of that propensity and tried not to do that with my children. Probably erred on the other side, probably gave them more than I should have. But the fact of the matter, my parents didn't give me squat. I mean, they gave me 3 meals a day, a place to sleep, and clothes to wear, and a week's vacation with the family every year. That was it. I mean, the rest of the time it was heads down, either in the books or doing the chores. I had to make my bed, feed the dog, mow the grass. And look, if the grass wasn't cut by 4 o'clock on Friday, 5 o'clock on Friday, I wasn't going out Friday night, period, paragraph, hard stop.
Yeah.
So we just, our generation, the baby boomers, I think, have created a very coddled class of or generation of people, and
I
they
agree.
need to toughen the hell up and get to work and stand on their own 2 feet. That's my paradigm.
Right. I think you're totally right. And I think we have a lot of examples in the world about subsidizing human beings and taking away purpose from them. Of course,
Yes.
communism, it happened and we saw the consequences, but it happened in Germany. It happened in the UK. It happened in Sweden. It happened in California and Chicago. You've seen the utopia of the big Papa state welfare system has caused California becoming a fourth world country on its own, of zombies, of homeless people, of criminality, of expensive unaffordability, right? On its maximum. I think that's the welfare state that the left is trying to sell. In New York City, you have seen right now the young Democrats selling again communism as a social democratic policy, and I think it's most of the same. It's the coddle generation that didn't have it hard, that wants everything for free, and that thinks that we're entitled to everything because we're a victim of whatever, the patriarchy, the white men, the globalists, some ghost over there is oppressing us. And that's why we need to take away from the rich, the hardworking people, the boomers, a piece of their wealth, so we can help migrants, we can help homeless, we can help trans people, and you just ruin society. We have lived this in Mexico, and I'm watching with a lot of worry what's happening in New York, of course, and Chicago and California, because it could be a future for a lot of people if the Democrats take the House and the Senate.
Well, let's switch gears just for a moment. You mentioned the cartels earlier. Now, I haven't been to Mexico City where you live for a long time, but I was there passing through basically, and I suggested to my wife that we spend a little time there, which we did. One of the things that really got my attention was that you would see business people in BMWs and Mercedes or whatever, and invariably they had very large men in the front seat and occasionally motorcycles on either side. It was not a place that I felt very comfortable, frankly. Has it gotten better or worse? And we hear so much about the cartels. Tell us about what it's like to live in Mexico and where the crime is now and where is it headed?
Well, Mexico City is safer than most of the country because you have all the government branches here. Of course, you have the president, who was a mayor of the city before she became a president. So it's true that the cartels killed less people here in Mexico City than some other cities in the country. But it's also true that you have to be aware where you're driving, where you're going to. If you're a businessman or a politically exposed person, you have to have your security team with you sometimes, a security strategy. But as a tourist, I would say if you walk around the touristy areas, the beautiful cultural areas in Mexico City, you shouldn't have any problems.
Well, I've wondered why your government wasn't more proactive in ridding itself of the cartels. Is there a fear factor that is at play? I mean, is it possible that the president of Mexico is herself afraid of the cartels?
Well, the cartels are not just the richest entities in the world. Imagine the numbers. 4 years of open borders, they say a migrant paid between $30,000 and $50,000 to the cartels to bring them from the southern border to the northern border. If you had 10,000 encounters a day, officially speaking, you're talking about at least $300 million a day. Just migrants paying to the cartels to come through the border. They have more money than most countries in the world. And probably added up, whole Africa or half Europe. So you're speaking about armies that have American weapons. That's unfortunate. Obama sent to Mexico with Fast and Fury hundreds of thousands of weapons to the cartels. And they are armed like an Israeli army, like an American army. So I can understand why the politicians, which are civilians and regular people, could be afraid of the cartels, because they're just millions richest people in Mexico, and really strong and armed force. So
are
we do.
you comfortable having this conversation? Or do you not, or do you have any trepidation about speaking so candidly about the cartels and their influence?
Well, it's common knowledge in Mexico. I represent the
Mm.
working class, and I'm representing people in 600 workplaces nationwide. So every day I listen to a story where my people have to pay extortion, are being kidnapped somewhere, or my truckers have to pay some kind of fee somewhere in Mexico so they can drive through the highways because the cartel control that part of the country. It's unfortunately for us common life and common knowledge, and we think we do need help from our own army, of course, but also from you guys, because the cartels taking over Mexico have killed hundreds of thousands of Americans, and not even the Second World War has been so tragic, or Vietnam for you guys, as the unsafety and the poverty in Mexico. So we have to work this out together.
Well, where do these murders occur? Are they along our border? Or are they inside the U.S. borders? Or are they U.S.
Well, the overdose
tourists?
deaths in America is around 100,000 a year because of fentanyl. So that's the number President Trump is taking to say Mexican drug cartels are killing 100,000 Americans a year because of fentanyl overdose.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Yeah. If you
Yes.
add the migrant trafficking and the crime that comes after the American cartels, because of course drug comes into America and you have to distribute the drugs. So you see a lot of black on black crime in Illinois, in California. It's also happening between Americans because of heroin, because of coke, because of fentanyl. And that's a collateral damage that's not even counted in the 100,000 deaths a year.
So we hear that, and this is the most disturbing of all to me. Of course, well, I don't know. I guess it would be on a par in terms of shock value and repulsion. But 300,000 to 400,000 children have come into the United States from the U.S. Mexican border that have just simply disappeared, just vanished into the night. President Trump and the FBI claim to have found maybe 150, 125,000 children. But what has happened to those children? And aren't the Mexican citizenry really concerned about this? I mean, that sounds like an epidemic to me.
Imagine how desperate people have to be. And it's not an excuse, because I think children trafficking or chopping off healthy parts of children is demonic activity.
I do too.
I think it's already a sign that we're really far away from God.
Yes.
By trafficking children and selling them for sexual rings, for Illuminati rituals or political rituals, or whatever Epstein was doing. I think half of them are probably all over the globe. And there are states in Mexico and cities, unfortunately, where families are selling their children already as babies. They're having children to sell them out to these rings. Of course, they say they're going to have a better way of life in America. I think most of us and of them know that it's a toss. Either your child goes to a field in California for child labor, or they are finished in a sexual ring somewhere in America or outside America, because America is not just an ending point. It's also a port of delivering children to the rest of the world. We shouldn't forget that. And it's very interesting to me that, especially while Obama was president and Biden, so many hundreds of thousands of children were sold, trafficked, and disappeared. It's something that I would like an explanation from whatever expert, why, when the leftist governments arrive in Latin America and in America itself, drug trafficking, migrant trafficking, and children trafficking and cheap labor just explodes. You can follow it really with the data. Why it's always the same phenomenon? And I don't know if we have an answer for that.
Well, for me, the exploitation of children is a red line. And it really bothers me that it is not higher on our list of national priorities than it appears to be. There seems to be ample lip service. I am encouraged by the fact that Kash Patel says that the FBI is actively trying to, and the Director of Homeland Security, the new secretary, announced that it's a priority. I would like to see more concrete results. Yeah. And in my mind, if I was a legislator, I would advocate that the sexual exploitation of children should carry with it a penalty of capital punishment. To me, it is a line that should not be tolerated or crossed ever, and it should be greeted with the most severe punishment that we can deliver. That's my belief.
I totally agree. But it's better to say, I think, last term, they said they lost 300,000 children, right? Mm-hmm. Now they have found 175,000. Mm-hmm. It's better that way than to say, again, we lost another 300,000.
That is an excellent point, and probably a good place of optimism to wrap it up. We've had a great conversation. Thank you,
John.
Alejandro Martinez, for coming on. You are with the National Food and Commerce Union, and we're just serendipitously have recorded this interview right as President Trump has said that he vowed that he is not signing the renewal of the USMCA. So we appreciate your insights and your candor, and I hope you'll come back to see us real soon, and that is the truth. Our next guest thinks you should take psychedelics. Well, there is a caveat that goes along with that, but welcome, Dr. Tracy Scott, to The Truth.
Thank you for having me.
So when you say psychedelics, you're not talking about for recreational uses.
Not exactly, no. I'm talking about right now in a truly kind of guided experience with a trained facilitator.
And why would you encourage people to do such a, I don't know. I'm not sure what category to place it in. It's not like society rejects it. I think society probably doesn't appreciate the benefits in certain cases. And it's probably tainted by the hippie era when people took LSD and mushrooms to get high. Is that right? Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a fair statement. I do. And I mean, I'm a true believer. I come from more of the pharmaceutical, allopathic Western medicine model myself. I have a PhD and worked in that arena for many, many years in biotechnology, and then found myself struggling with something called chronic Lyme disease. And I really, after 15 years of trying to sort of biohack my body back to wellness, I discovered psychedelics. I discovered the power of these plants. And what it did for my physical healing was incredible because it works, so much on your subconscious mind. And that's really where we trap trauma, we trap memories. And a lot of times we don't even know that we're struggling with something so deep on an emotional level. And the body does kind of keep score, like the famous book has been denoted. The body keeps score, which is this physical manifestation of illness based on our mind.
Well, it has been a subject of great interest to me. I've worked as a volunteer in the mental health field for 30 years. I was on the founding board of Skyline Trail in Atlanta, which is recognized as perhaps the best treatment facility in America or the world for mood disorders, including depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, eating disorders. We have a main campus, and then we have a young adult main campus, as well as an eating disorder dedicated campus. It's a phenomenal facility. And I would read articles like some of the ones that you just sent me about psilocybin. I'm a lay person, so forgive me. And other uses like, what do they call it? Molly, what is it?
MDMA.
MDMA for the
Mm-hmm.
treatment of mood
Mm-hmm.
disorders. And I
Yeah.
would send them to our clinical director and say, "Are you aware of this? Are we looking at it? What do you think?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of like, "Well,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know," sort of
Mm-hmm.
hands off. So bring us into the 21st century, would you?
Yeah, of course. Yes, now there's really decent research underway in all countries, actually. And, furthest along, I think, from a robust research standpoint, is the United States. President Trump just dumping 50 million into research and funding at a federal level. And so
Was that
MDMA,
5-0 or 1-5?
50, yeah,
50 billion?
50, 50 million, 50
Million with an
million,
M.
yeah,
Okay.
million.
That's still a good chunk of change.
Still, it's good. Yeah, it's still, we're moving in the right positive direction. MDMA for PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, and psilocybin, as you had mentioned, which are magic mushrooms for depression, LSD for generalized anxiety. They're kind of the furthest along right now, not kind of, they are with safety and efficacy. And they both have FDA, all three have FDA breakthrough therapy designation. I think what the loudest political coverage right now is around ibogaine, which is something that I work with. The full root is called iboga, but it has like the thinnest late stage clinical data, more than MDMA and psilocybin are further along on that side. But we've got some pretty premier institutions looking at this. So Stanford and Harvard, Michigan, Johns Hopkins, Columbia, just spoke with them last week. And so all of them have actively, researching this psychedelic space.
It's a area I don't profess to have a lot of knowledge in.
Mhm.
I do understand what MDMA is, I think. Um, magic mushrooms, I have no visibility over. And,
Mhm.
and then there's LSD, which is a
Mhm.
whole other type of drug that has a
Mhm.
huge stigma associated with it. But then you find out that really, really brilliant people. I think Charlton Heston, um, uh, probably Elon Musk, and certainly the founder of Apple, Steve Jobs, was
Mhm.
was very public about having used LSD. And
Yeah.
um, then there's another podcaster that I listen to, Stephen Mark Ryan, David, Stephen David Ryan, Stephen Mark Ryan, from Australia, and he reports having gone to, I think, South America and taken
Mhm.
a drug that is in the mushroom family, I think, that is supposed to kind of be a breakthrough for a personal breakthrough for people to really better understand and know themselves. I can't remember what that was
Mhm.
called. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Probably ayahuasca.
That's it
Um,
exactly. And
mhm.
in there,
Mhm.
ayahuasca, waka, and then sorry, and then isn't there a more potent, or is there a less potent version of that that people experiment with?
DMT itself, which is in ayahuasca, and so people can take DMT directly. It's called the God molecule. So a lot of countries right now are, also researching these different things like LSD. I mean, Brazil, where a lot of this ayahuasca comes from, with the indigenous tribes, they have an active research program around ayahuasca in particular, and DMT. So they've isolated the molecule.
And what country is doing that?
Brazil is doing that, just because they also have, that's the indigenous people. A lot of the tribes in Brazil use ayahuasca very commonly because that's the origin. It comes from South America and those countries like Ecuador and Brazil.
So what is it? Is it safe? I mean, when I was a kid, people were taking LSD, not my friends. I was like, in my 9, 10, 11 year age
Mhm.
period. But, Woodstock, and then following on that was the Byron Pop Festival. And
Mhm.
wasn't Timothy Leary a professor at Emory? If I got that right, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
not.
so. I'm not.
Uh, but anyway, LSD was very talked about, and
Mhm.
With every breath that was spoken about LSD, people would follow it up with, you know, you can get a bad trip.
Yes.
That's a pretty strong deterrent in my mind um, to taking
Yes.
a substance. Evidently, it's like a walk through hell if you're taking a bad trip and you can't just woo yourself out of it. So, enlighten us.
Right.
What are we talking about here?
Well, these are things that, oftentimes were not regulated years ago. And that's why we're moving into research where companies are now researching this. And oftentimes they're starting to talk about taking the hallucinogenic part of it out of the molecule. So people are not having these bad trips. So plenty of companies are now researching this and how they take out the hallucinogenic piece so that people can still get benefits from it. Um, I have mixed feelings about that because I have done so much work myself with Indigenous people over the years. I've done a lot of ethnographic research. I've gone to these countries. I've sat with Indigenous people. And I do feel like nature never makes a mistake, right? It's like we have all that we need in nature. And that's really how they see it. It's like nature is the apothecary to treat many of these things. And so if you take the spirit out of the plant, which is what a lot of companies are trying to do, then sometimes people, in my belief, don't get the full kind of spectrum healing that they really need.
So, what kind of healing are you talking about? Well, two questions. What you
Mhm.
keep talking about indigenous people. What does that mean
Yes.
exactly?
I like original people, tribes. These are indigenous tribal people, like from Africa. They hold the iboga plant, the original people that have discovered this, and they work with it. They work with the full root, the plant itself. The Kayapo people from Brazil, they work with ayahuasca and they work with other things as well, other psychedelics. And so they use them differently than we do often. They use them more for, I would say, wholeness, to get back to your true essence. They use it under ceremonial aspects and ritualistic aspects, for like for Africa. In Africa, for example, with the iboga plant, they used it years and years, centuries ago for hunting because it has this part that it keeps people awake, but it also is very amplifying of all the senses. And so people used it for nighttime hunting so it would amplify their senses and they would be able to see where the animals are and hear them. And it multiplies your senses in that way. So and then they happened to discover other things about it, that it was a hallucinogenic, and they thought, oh, wait a minute, what's happening here? Is more robust than we originally thought that it was.
So, that's the first I've ever heard that people would use drugs to go hunting, but that's a fascinating insight, frankly.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
does anyone ever go to Brazil to take ayahuasca and not come back, or come back in a like totally changed state, but not for the better?
I mean, I'm sure there are isolated incidences of that. That's why you have to be super careful about who you choose as a guide. And even these groups, it's very popular now. You can get online, and there's numerous places that offer this. In Brazil, you can go with the tribes, you can sit with them. They precept you, if you will. You stay 2 weeks with them.
Two
It's the same in
weeks.
Africa.
Holy cow.
Oftentimes, yeah, to get initiated, to do all of the things, to learn how to hold that plant, to learn all of the things that there are about it. Sure, it's definitely an apprenticeship of sorts. And oftentimes we, as Westerners, we get excited about going there and learning these things. And yeah, oftentimes it can be dangerous if you don't know exactly who you're sitting with.
Yeah, I'd be worried
Mhm.
about how much I had in my wallet when I went to someplace like that. Probably leave my Rolex at home, I think. But all right, so you're saying ayahuasca, DNT are more for introspection. Would that be accurate?
Yes, ayahuasca is a vine. And so the way that I describe ayahuasca is that it oftentimes takes you kind of outside of yourself. It's just the way that the vine moves. It's a feminine plant. They refer to it as Mother Aya. It comes in quite soft when she kind of wants to give you some insights. It's a little bit softer than some of the others, but Oftentimes with ayahuasca, I feel that because I've sat with it and I've had a number of clients that have sat with it. Sometimes being that vine is taking you outside of yourself. And it's hard to kind of put that into practice. People see certain things and they have these incredible visions, but oftentimes it's a little bit, I would say, it's a little confusing, afterwards for people. They think, how does that really relate to my life? How do I integrate that information? So, versus the one that I hold most often, which is called iboga, that's from Africa, that one is a root. And so it comes from the ground. It tends to be more introspective, as you just mentioned. So, it's really about the person. It gives you more of a prescriptive life review, and it's very direct. There really is no gray. It's black and white. It's like, here's where you have been, here's where you are, and here's where you're going, and here's how you course correct, here's how you fix it. So
Does it,
it
I mean,
is
do some
very
people
direct.
freak out? I mean, does it tell you if you're a really bad person, or does it validate if you're a okay or good person?
So that's a great question. I have never been doing this for years. I've been doing this for, over a decade now. And I've never had anybody have a bad trip. What it does is it kind of gives you a unbiased view of your own life. And so it doesn't necessarily have a good or bad. It's really just not labeling things as good or bad. You just are seeing it, and you're seeing it as an unbiased viewer. And so I wouldn't say it's a bad trip, but it does tell you very directly, look, this is how your mind works, and here's how you correct it. I'll give you my own example. When I first sat with it, I was on this for like a 10-hour merry-go-round ride, and I kept seeing the same scene with the same people over and over and over again. And at one point, I had heard at like the 11th hour, Iboga came in very strongly to say, are you dizzy? Are you tired of seeing this scene? And I said, my God, yes. And I
Yeah,
said, oh, do you want to get, yeah,
I'm
yeah, do you want to get
uncomfortable
off
just
the
hearing it.
ride? Right. It's very dizzying. And it said, do you want to get off the ride? And I said, yes. How? Okay, now let us drive, now sit back, relax, surrender, and let us do the work, because we're showing you how your mind has been working for the last, 35 years. And it perseverates. It's like people often fixate on things over and over and over. And so that was that perseveration. And it was giving me a very strong visual, kind of uncomfortable, right? I mean, not horrible, but uncomfortable to the point of like, oh my gosh, I see it. I see it very strongly. Now I'm actually
Yeah,
feeling
I
it.
mean, I
Mhm.
always thought what you're describing is what happens when you go to meet St. Peter. And I've been kind of, you know,
Mhm.
a little anxious about what St. Peter would say to me when I saw him. But
Mhm.
maybe the benefit is that you can do that while on earth and have time to course
Yes.
correct and have a
Yes.
better chance of entering the pearly gates. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, for
Is it
sure.
that sort of a
Because
religious experience that I'm
yeah,
describing?
it can be. People see God oftentimes. People commune with Him. We're Jesus. Different. Saint Michael a lot. Archangel Michael. So yeah, it can be. It can be a very religious experience. It depends on obviously the set and the setting and who's holding the space for you, who's facilitating. I think that makes a big difference in the experience for people. But yes,
So was that another person or was that your own brain asking if you wanted to get off the merry-go-round? I wasn't clear on
it
that.
was my own brain. I mean, it's so mysterious how these plants work. They're such master educators. And it's pretty interesting because as I mentioned, iboga being from equatorial Africa, it has this, and I've been many times. The tribe, the indigenous people wear a certain color. Red and black and white is it's very symbolic there, especially in the ceremonies. And you see certain musical instruments that they play. And I have clients that have never having been to Africa or seen any of that, will take iboga and see that entire scene perfectly. They'll describe the instruments, they'll describe what they're wearing. And so you think, how is that possible? I do really believe that it's almost like the DNA of the plant itself that holds this kind of rich tradition, and it's giving it to us.
That is amazing. I will have sometimes dreams,
Hmm.
and they can be both pleasant and they can also be kind of
Mm.
uneasy or not nightmares, but just, stuff that you'd rather have the more enjoyable dream. But I'll wake up and I'll be able to remember the dream, and I'll reflect on it. The first question that invariably pops into my mind is that came from my brain. I've never consciously had that thought before. It's pretty cool that my brain was able to depict this, but how? I mean, how did my brain manufacture that scene or that thought? And it really is very puzzling to me. And so what you're describing is sort of, I feel like, a pathway into that question. And I can see how that would be an adventure. But with every adventure come risk. And I just don't want to meet a group of wild engines on the train running down the track and get robbed or worse.
Well, and I think this is why, honestly, it's important to do these things with true intention, and a good facilitator helps you write down, what do you want to gain out of this experience? What are the intentions going in, so that it doesn't take you on Toad's wild ride, right? And that's sort of the risk, or the inherent risk, of doing these things on our own sometimes. And so it needs to be professionally guided. And a professional facilitator and a guide, someone like me, is able to guide the participant through these experiences, so it's not taking them on some kind of, other road.
Right. So
Mhm.
iboga, ayahuasca, DMT,
Mhm.
these are not
Mhm.
substances that someone would take before they go out to the club.
Oh gosh, no, absolutely not. No.
Yet
Mm-mm.
MDA and LSD are things that young people, I'm told, sometimes will take and then go
Yes.
out to the club.
Yes, they do. MDMA and LSD, more synthetic, so they're not plants. They're not plant derived. And yeah, you mentioned MDMA and Molly before, and so people do take those things before they go out to the club. And the risk right now is that they're laced with other things often. So we don't know. When young people buy those things on the street, we don't know what they're mixed with. We really don't. It's probably not pure like it was in the 70s or the 60s. That's the intrinsic risk with all of this. And we do see more addiction from things like kratom and all of those things, where people are becoming more addicted to things they buy on the street. So that's not good. And that's where these plants are very powerful, especially ibogaine. It's a very powerful addiction interrupter.
Okay, so we've been talking about some of the clinical benefits of, forgive me, iboga,
Mhm.
ayahuasca, DMT. Are there
Mhm.
pleasurable effects that go along with it? Or is it strictly for therapeutical purposes?
No, there are pleasurable effects from it. I mean, many people see incredible, beautiful visions. It's everything is really heightened, and so a lot of your senses, as I mentioned before, are heightened. People see memories from the past that are beautiful, people that have maybe crossed over to the other side that come through, ancestors, people that possibly are your grandparents, or if parents have passed away, they often have messages for us. So, yeah, no, it can be very
Oh my
beautiful.
gosh. You're
Mm.
saying it's like a seance that I could actually, can you converse with the departed,
Yes,
or is it
often,
a
yes.
one-way conversation?
Yes, oftentimes, yes, they can. They have messages for us, and that,
Could I
it's
reconnect with my parents?
possibly, if it's meant to happen. It usually does in these types of ceremonies, honestly, and if it's guided and you have the intention, oftentimes, as I mentioned, you have to go in with the right intentions. And so if you go in with the right intentions and that's what you're seeking, we often can ask these plants to show us these things. And it's not always a guarantee, but oftentimes it does happen.
Not to belabor this subject, but my mom, who I loved, um, she had her shortcomings.
Mhm.
One of them is she did play favorites between me and my brother. The
Mhm.
problem for my brother was, and for me at the time it wasn't, but I was her favorite. And
Mhm.
so that created tremendous resentment, I think, between my brother and I. And I'm sorry for that. But I do think that she was really at fault for doing that. I always bent over backwards as a result of that to treat all of my children the same. And in every context that you can think of, I tried to do that, and so did my wife. And we consciously discussed it to elevate each of our boys and not slight them. Even though our middle son says at every opportunity that he's the forgotten middle son, which I think is just pure manipulation, because if we favored anybody, it's been him.
Oh yeah, I have one of those as well.
So give us the hierarchy between iboga. Pronounce it.
Iboga.
Iboga. So the emphasis on the second syllable. Ayahuasca and DMT. What are the gradations?
DMT, right? So
DMT?
DMT, yes, it's an M. Like I get married.
Like Mary.
Right.
Okay. Oh, I had it wrong.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I am somewhat biased, but they do dub iboga as the Mount Everest of all plants, of the plant kingdom, of the psychedelic world. And it's just because it is so powerful. It is such a powerful healer of trauma, mostly, addiction, yes, trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression. It does so many different things in the brain. It works on so many different receptors at the same time that's what makes it so powerful. And people have these just incredible stories of just recovery, in every sense of the word. So it's pretty exciting. I love the efficacy of that plant. That's why I work with it.
This idea just popped into my brain. Do you mind if I ask Grok to evaluate these substances?
Sure, go for it.
Hi, Aura. I'm looking into the substances known as iboga, ayahuasca, and DMT. Can you evaluate these substances both from the upside and the potential downside and risk of them? What do you think?
These three are very different substances, despite overlapping psychedelic effects. Ibogaine stands apart with serious cardiac risks, while ayahuasca and pure DMT have much better safety profiles in controlled settings. Ibogaine, upsides. Strongest evidence for treating opioid addiction. It can dramatically suppress withdrawal symptoms within hours and reduce cravings for weeks to months in observational studies. Some data also show benefits for PTSD, depression, and anxiety, especially in veterans. One study of special operations vets found high remission rates for PTSD, depression, and anxiety after a single dose. Downsides and risks. This one carries real danger. It prolongs the QT interval, raising the risk of dangerous heart arrhythmias like torsades de pointes. There are around 30 to 33 documented deaths linked to ibogaine, often involving pre-existing heart issues, electrolyte problems, or mixing with other drugs like opioids. Other side effects include nausea, ataxia, loss of coordination, tremors, and occasional mania or psychosis. It's not something to experiment with casually. Medical screening and monitoring, ECG, electrolytes are essential. It's illegal in the U.S., Schedule I, and best avoided outside highly supervised clinical settings. Ayahuasca upsides. Solid evidence for rapid antidepressant effects in treatment-resistant depression, with some randomized trials showing significant symptom reduction lasting at least a week after one dose. It also shows promise for anxiety, addiction, and emotional processing. The brew, DMT plus MAOIs from Banisteriopsis Ka often leads to profound personal insights in ceremonial or therapeutic contexts. Long-term traditional users don't show cognitive deficits and often report better mental health. Downsides and risks, mainly acute nausea and vomiting, the purge, which many see as part of the healing. Transient increases in heart rate and blood pressure occur, but serious adverse events are rare in healthy people in controlled settings. Rare prolonged psychotic reactions can happen, especially in those with personal or family history of psychosis or bipolar. Avoid if on SSRIs or other serotonergic drugs due to serotonin syndrome risk. Overall, it's considered physiologically safe in screened adults. DMT upsides. Pure DMT, smoked, vaped, or IV, is being studied for depression with very rapid effects. Some trials show strong reductions in symptoms within a day, with response rates around 60 to 80% in small studies and remission in over half at 3 months in one recent trial. The experience is extremely intense but short, 5 to 15 minutes when vaped, smoked, longer when infused. It may promote neuroplasticity and emotional breakthroughs similar to other classic psychedelics. Downsides and risks: very intense psychological effects that can be overwhelming. Panic or challenging trips are possible. Physically, it causes a sharp spike in heart rate and blood pressure during the acute phase. When taken alone, without MAOIs, it lacks the vomiting common to ayahuasca. Low addiction potential and serious adverse events are rare in clinical trials. My take: ayahuasca and DMT look like promising tools for depression and personal growth with manageable risks in proper settings. Ibogaine is in a different category, potentially game-changing for stubborn opioid addiction, but the cardiac risk makes it high stakes. None of these are magic bullets or risk-free, and the therapeutic benefits seem heavily tied to setting, and integration support afterward. The evidence is still mostly early stage, small trials, observational data, so we're not at standard treatment yet. If you're considering any of these, get a full medical workup, especially heart screening for ibogaine, and only work with reputable, medically supervised providers. Self-experimentation, especially with iboga, is a bad idea. What specifically draws you to these? Addiction, depression, or curiosity about the experiences?
Just this nice lady that came on our podcast and has been telling us about it. Thank you very much, Aura. I mean, I think that what Aura said is actually very consistent with what you told us.
Yeah, I think it's a little deceiving. It's a little disappointing. They have to err on the side of caution, obviously. But for me, and I have a medical background. I was a nurse anesthetist and intensive care unit nurse, and I also have a PhD and have been working with these plants for a long time. To me, ibogaine has the most potential, and there is a difference. Ibogaine is in a clinical setting where you have to be monitored. Obviously, we give magnesium to protect the heart, so we know these things. We have safety protocols. This isn't something somebody would do on their own. I do more of the full route, again, the iboga, for psychospiritual benefits and all kinds of other things as well. So yeah, I feel like, each one of them has their own benefit, if you will. And again, safety is a big deal. Harm reduction is something that we, as skilled facilitators, need to pay attention to.
Well, I think you were clear about that
Mhm.
even before we asked Grok.
Mhm.
You said that having a qualified mentor or
Yeah.
whatever you call it was very important. And um, you did explain that there are some medical risks, so that you have to be a person that is deemed suitable for it. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't think you'd want to have somebody that had a known heart
Of course
condition
not. No,
take iboga. So
sure.
I didn't find a lot of conflict, but um, Aura said that it was really significant in terms of helping people get off opioid addiction.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
feel like in that case, it would be worth the risk. Is it a cure or a Band-Aid in those cases? Is it lasting?
Yeah, we don't have longitudinal data, which means that, we don't have a lot of long-term data looking out. But the data that we do have is extremely rich in that, yes, it's curative. It's, listen, it's hard to get statistics on this stuff, again, because we don't have longitudinal data, but it's certainly not a Band-Aid. It's certainly not that. And it does depend greatly, as Grog said, on integration. And so we can do all this amazing work and interrupt those pathways in the brain, those opioid pathways, and all of the dopaminergic pathways that are the reward center, which is what ibogaine or iboga works on. But if people don't integrate properly, integration means continuing with therapy. How do these insights and how do these things take shape in your brain and what you do after with it? So oftentimes, if we talk about addicts, going back to a setting that they don't have support, and that they may be around people that are users, that's not integration. That's not good integration. So we're looking at long-term solutions for those people. In fact, here in Costa Rica, I have a project called Garden of Divine, the God Project, and that's specifically for integration. It's a place in nature where we have different healing modalities for people who come out of these experiences and then they go for 6 weeks perhaps or longer to integrate, because a lot of that is teaching them, the tools, taking what they learned from the ceremony and being able to integrate and embody that. How are they actually putting it into practice before they go back to their lives, in the 3D matrix. So that's important to teach people these skills.
Well, did I hear Grok correctly saying that ayahuasca could have short-term effect on people with depression, but that it wore off after a week? Is that what I heard, or
It
did I
typically,
misunderstand?
yeah, typically it's not as long lasting. And that's why oftentimes you'll see people, it does increase the serotonin in your brain. All of these things do, right? They increase their adrenergic receptors and all of it, the pathways rather. And so people do, they feel good for a couple weeks and then they kind of go back down to baseline. And so oftentimes you'll hear people kind of revisiting ayahuasca, or they have to revisit or microdose the psilocybin. There has to be some, maintenance to it, which I don't always agree with. Again, they're not coupling it really with integration. And so that's continued, different types of modalities, whether that be talking to an integration coach or therapist, or continuing to work in conjunction with somebody who's an integration specialist. That's what keeps those results longer lasting.
So, what's your insight? And we brushed on LSD and MDMA.
Yeah.
I had an interview with Dr. Carol Lieberman, and I asked her about these substances. She's considerably older than you, closer to my age, and I was really surprised. I was caught off guard that she said she had actually in 2000 gone to Peru and actually taken, was it ibogaine or ayahuasca, Anthony?
Probably ayahuasca. Yeah.
Ayahuasca.
Peru. Yeah.
She said she was glad that she did it, but she probably wouldn't do it again. So we kind of ran out of time, and I didn't really have a chance to go deeper into it with her, but I intend to. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it depends if they're de novo. In the research world, we say de novo. That term is like, have they done it for the first time? Is that a first time experience? And so oftentimes when you're in these places like where indigenous tribes live, in the jungles of Africa or the jungles of South America, to have an experience like that, it can be challenging. It's tough, right? You've got mosquitoes and you've got, it's hot and it's just.
So bring repellent with you.
Yeah,
Is what you're saying.
it's not pleasant. The environment itself is oftentimes not pleasant. They're definitely not as nurturing as someone like me would be, right? To do things in comfort, I think for the first time, for those de novo people, it's very important. I always tell people that when they say, I want to try iboga in Africa, I want to go to Gabon, and it's my prerequisite is come here first, do this experience, have it be in a nice setting and somewhere that you're comfortable physically, and then you can go and do it in the jungles of wherever.
So, what do you do for 6 days? Do you spend the first 2 days talking about issues that you're dealing with, perhaps, and so to give you insight while they're in the iboga.
Iboga.
Iboga. I'm going to get this right before we're done. Iboga. What do you call it? Trance experience.
Journey.
Mode.
Huh? Journey experience,
okay.
Right? Yeah, journey.
Iboga journey. I'm getting the lingo.
You're getting it. You're getting it down.
For 6 days, what do we do?
Well, typically, what I do, because I have a PhD in the gut biome and nutritional sciences, I like to look at people's microbiome of their gut. I like to look at their amino acids in their brain that are called neurotransmitters. Those two things go together. It's called the gut-brain axis. And I like to see people's baseline. I like to see where their serotonin is, what their dopamine is, how are they sleeping? That's GABA. That's like nature's Valium, if you will. And so oftentimes people, because of diets, because of soil, because of an inflamed gut, they aren't making serotonin, for example. And so I need to see that before they even come to me, and I do a personalized protocol based on those results. And that helps to extend the good feelings that people get afterwards, like we talked about, the serotonin and the dopamine. And so I like to optimize people. So I'll start talking to them before they arrive. I'll get a medical history. I need to know what currently they're taking, what other maybe psych disorders they've been diagnosed with, because often those are contraindicated for any of these psychedelics. And then they arrive and we start to go over intentions. What do you want to gain out of the experience? The next day is the journey itself. We start, with Iboga, it's a long half life, it's a longer journey, it lasts longer than the others. And so we start about dusk, about 6 or 7. And then I'm awake all night with somebody, professionally guiding them. And in the morning, when the sun comes up, is when they go back to their sort of sleeping space. And that's the day that I call the day of magic. It's when all of those new neuronal pathways start to take shape in the brain. So we kind of limit, inputs from that day. We don't allow them to have phones or any kind of electronics. We want to kind of, put off any outside influences. And they have a journal and they're still getting a lot of reflections that day. They're getting a lot of downloads, is what we call it. And then the following day, their body starts to come back online. They're starting to feel like, okay, I can get up, I can walk, I can walk straight. I'm hungry, my gut's starting to come back online. And that's when the clinical psychologist that's on my team comes in and starts to work with them on what I mentioned, integration. And so she also customizes personalized programs for people depending on what they're struggling with, what kind of trauma they may have. And then she'll devise a personalized program for them with a lot of the therapies. And so it might look like internal family systems or family constellations or, eye movement desensitization therapies, EMDR. It just really depends on the person. And yeah, then on the last day, we try to do something fun. We try to do an outing, a lot of times it's a hike to the waterfalls, water's important, or a gentle horseback ride, things like that. And then they go home and we continue with the support after they go back home.
That is a really interesting concept. Now, so in this 6 days, you're going to provide room,
Yeah.
board,
hmm
yourself,
hmm
a shrink, and a tour guide. Whew, all of a sudden it's starting to sound expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, private
Is it?
chef. Yeah, we have a chef here.
Private
Chef
chef?
is here. Yeah, the chef is here based on people's dietary guidelines and needs. Some people can't have gluten or dairy. Listen, I mean, these things are not cheap for sure. I think we're in the ballpark of what others charge for these types of experiences. We do have a sort of pay it forward program. There's so many people that it shouldn't just be for, the wealthy or the people that can afford it. I believe in that. And so we do have a scholarship program that if somebody qualifies, we'll bring them in for usually like less than 50% of the price. And we try to do those, I at least 4 or 5 times a year, we do those types of weeks.
So what do you come in? Do you come by yourself, in pairs, groups? Are you by yourself? Are you with a group? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I got the message. This might sound woohoo to you, but during my initiation in Africa, I got the message very loudly from the plant itself is to work more with smaller groups of people. This is a
Mhm.
very intense experience, and a lot of others I know do, 6, 8, 10, 11 at a time. And I feel that it's very quintessential to the work because it is so deep. It's about you, it's about the person. It's so, personal. And so I really don't work with more than 3 people at a time. People have to, they come and typically they'll want to come with a spouse or someone that they're close to in their family. I usually don't recommend that. Honestly, we've done it a few times where we stagger people. So maybe the husband comes first, has his journey, and then, the wife comes in on kind of the back end of his. It's not ideal just because you don't know what's going to come up in those types of experiences. Those are things that are in our subconscious mind. And oftentimes when
Well, that
when we've allowed those,
I was going to ask
yeah,
you. I mean, while you're under the
yeah.
influence of Ibagata, are you going to say stuff you wish you hadn't
Well,
revealed?
you're really just so deep in your own experience. You're really sort of just zoned in on yourself. You really drown out other things that are alongside of you or in the room. But There's just sometimes just things, emotions come up that people feel. It's like, oh, they maybe are unbeknownst to them once they get there. And then in the ceremony, things may come up that maybe there's conflict. Maybe there's something in the person's emotional field that's like, gosh, I don't know. I'm struggling with whatever with this partner. And then it makes it harder for the person to focus on themselves. That's the big thing. It's like this is a very personalized journey. So it's not about the other
So do
person.
people break down? Do they
Sometimes, or
either have
yeah,
fits of laughter
yes,
or fits of sorrow
yes,
and
of
cry?
course, yeah. All of that is part of the purge. Purging is, we think of it as vomiting, but a purge can be a laugh, a purge can be a cry, a purge can be many things. And oftentimes, when couples come together, especially if they're close, if one is purging or having something happened on the side, especially the purge, when someone's vomiting, the other maybe goes, "Oh gosh, are they okay?" And it kind
Mhm.
of takes them out of their own experience a little bit.
That's amazing. That is,
Mm.
it's intriguing. Now, you kind of dodged my question there,
Yeah.
Doc. So what do others charge for this?
Okay.
I'll ask it that way.
Well, the range is about I think 6,000 up to for private ceremonies 12,000. There's quite a bit of a range there. And so, I charge for private on the higher side. We have payment plans, obviously. And then if I can put two people together, it's more around the $9,000 mark. If I have two people together or three people together, it becomes a little bit less expensive. But again, it includes those testing, it includes the testing that I do, it includes all the other things. They just have to get their flights. And yeah, and so that's kind of the
That
average.
doesn't strike me
Mhm.
as terribly extravagant or unreasonable
Mhm.
because you are delivering a lot of personal
Yeah.
time, attention, and medical um, reports. So,
Mhm.
um, can you tell us both? Let's start with the worst. What anecdotally,
Mhm.
what's the worst thing that's ever happened to somebody while they're under your care
Oh, goodness.
or under your spell?
I really, I have not had nobody's had a bad trip. Everybody that comes says they feel so held here, It's just even the space. This space, this house was actually originally built by Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman. And I just, she built it for her own healing, actually. She had some addictions herself and built it for her own healing and refuge. I just think it's the land that holds people, not just us as humans, but they feel very nourished. I'll be honest with you. I had one experience where I went with somebody else that did ibogaine to Mexico, and they wanted me to come along because we had a relationship and they knew me and they trusted me, and they had a bad trip on the ibogaine. Now, I mentioned earlier that the ibogaine is one of those alkaloids of the whole root. So they extract it, they concentrate it, they mix it with HCl, and they give it. It can be more intense than iboga. It comes on more like, a freight train in a way. And he had a bad experience from the standpoint of he saw what he described as like demons. He kept kind of shouting out like, "I see
Hmm.
demons, I see demons." And we were able to obviously be there to hold him in that moment, in those moments, and he felt safer. But I also know that there have been people that have taken ibogaine and then they come to me for the full root experience, or they go somewhere else for the full root experience, and they say it feels quite different. It feels more slow, more gradual, more softer. It's a softer experience versus the ibogaine. The ibogaine tends to feel more fragmented. When you extract something and it's an
Okay,
isolate or it's just one of the alkaloids or the metabolite of that, then yeah, it's not you don't get the full entourage effect like you would with the full plant, the full root.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So we really like to extract the truth, and I really appreciate your
Yeah.
candor on the negative
Mhm.
uh, uh, story.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, what's your most positive outcome or
Mhm.
groups, class of
Oh
outcomes?
gosh, I just had one yesterday. A past client was helping with some website stuff because he's a tech guy. He just texted me, "I'm on my phone, or I would show you." But the gist of it was, before I came to you, my whole life was in shambles. I did not know how to pick myself up or how I was going to move forward with my life. And he was a married guy with kids. And he said, I felt so held by the team at Revella that my whole entire life has changed. It's like
Wow.
unrecognizable. Yeah. So I mean it's pretty typical, I have to say.
Well, I think you can pat yourself on the back for that one.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate your coming on and speaking to us. You seem incredibly transparent and candid,
Thank you.
which I very much appreciate. I don't feel like you've tried to snow us or pull the wool over our eyes. I think you've given us a very balanced insight into this whole thing. It is absolutely fascinating. I will speak to my wife and see if I can maybe summon the courage to sign
Come on
up.
down.
Anthony says we should do a podcast on it. If I participate, that we
Yes.
should film it all. I can just tell you that is not going to happen. It would be interesting, but if I do summon the courage and I collect some
Yeah.
data that convinces me that I might benefit from it, I'll consider it. But it really is fascinating. Dr. Tracy Scott coming to us from Costa Rica today. And thank you. And I hope you'll come back again very soon.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you very much.